Picture this. It is a freezing Tuesday evening in January.
Oh, that bitter, cut through your bones kind of cold.
Exactly. Sleet is literally falling sideways. And you're 32 years old. You have just buried your father hours ago.
So you are already at your absolute lowest emotional point.
Right. The funeral reception has barely even ended. And right now, you are standing in the cracked asphalt driveway of your childhood home. You're shivering, and you are holding a single, hastily packed suitcase.
Because your own brother just kicked you out.
Yes. Your own flesh and blood. He just gave you exactly 1 hour to pack your entire life and leave forever. So you dig into your coat pocket. You have exactly $17 in your wallet.
Which is terrifying.
It's beyond terrifying.
Right.
And you pull out your phone to check your banking app, right? You're just hoping to find enough cash for a cheap motel. But you see this bright red banner across the screen.
Oh, no. The account hold.
The joint bank account that you share with your father, the exact same account your paycheck deposits into every 2 weeks, has just been mysteriously frozen. Yeah, you are entirely, breathtakingly alone in this sleep.
I mean, it's a scenario that is explicitly designed to bypass the logical brain. It forces a person directly into a primal survival state.
Because you literally can't think about anything else.
Right. You are standing in freezing precipitation. There's no biological capacity left to process grief. You definitely can't contemplate the legal parameters of an eviction. Your physiological systems are just screaming at you to find warmth, shelter, and safety immediately.
It's the ultimate vulnerability. But here is the secret that the brother, the guy standing inside that warm, inherited house, he doesn't know it yet.
And it is a massive secret.
It's the secret that is going to fundamentally alter the trajectory of both of their lives. Because in a matter of weeks, the sister standing out there in the freezing sleet won't just be coming back.
No. She is going to legally, structurally, and unequivocally own his debt.
She will literally hold his entire financial existence in her shivering hands.
It's a complete inversion of power. And what's fascinating here is that he engineered the architecture of his own destruction, entirely blind to the trap he was setting.
Okay, let's unpack this. Today we are looking at a huge stack of court transcripts, probate litigation files, forensic accounting audits, and psychological assessments of familial financial abuse.
It is a mountain of documentation.
It really is. And our mission for this deep dive is to deconstruct these jaw-dropping, purely factual accounts of ultimate family betrayals. We're focusing specifically on young women who were evicted, discarded, and intentionally erased by their own families.
But instead of breaking under the weight of that trauma, they fought back.
Exactly. They utilized staggering patience, secret inheritances, and ironclad legal documentation to spring the ultimate traps.
The files we are analyzing reveal a fascinating recurring pattern in how human beings weaponize legal systems against their own kin. The perpetrators in these accounts consistently rely on having a total monopoly over the narrative.
They think they control the whole story.
Right. They operate on this deeply flawed assumption that their victims lack the financial resources, the intellectual capacity, or, honestly, the emotional fortitude to challenge them.
So they see a lack of immediate retaliation, and they misinterpret that silence as surrender.
Precisely. They mistake shock for weakness.
So I want you, the listener, to think about your own life for a second. Have you ever been severely underestimated by someone who thought they held all the cards?
We all have, at some point.
Right. Someone who looked at you and just saw a pawn, like a minor inconvenience they could sweep off the board without any consequence. Hold on to the memory of that feeling, because as we dissect the mechanics of these legal checkmates today, the payoff is going to be incredibly satisfying.
The mechanism of justice in the files we are reviewing, it isn't chaotic, it's not emotionally driven, it is methodical. It operates with the cold, precise efficiency of a surgical strike.
Well, let's get right into the inciting incident of our primary case study. Her name is Megan Norton. She is the 32-year-old woman standing in that freezing driveway in Whitmore, Pennsylvania.
And the court documents provide an incredibly vivid, almost cinematic account of the hours leading up to this eviction.
Starting with her father Raymond's funeral. Her brother Derek is the quintessential golden child. During the service, Derek is positioned at the very front. He's standing beside this heavy mahogany casket.
And, of course, Derek selected the casket. He managed the floral arrangements. He is performing his grief flawlessly.
It's a total performance. He's shaking hands, receiving embraces from the extended family, presenting this perfect image of the somber, resilient patriarch in waiting.
He is actively managing the optics of the event. In the psychological profiles of family systems that feature a designated golden child and a designated scapegoat, public events like funerals are highly performative.
So Derek isn't just mourning.
No, he is consolidating social power. He is establishing himself as the definitive authority figure in the wake of the father's death.
And Megan's positioning physically reflects her status in that family hierarchy. She isn't at the front. She is completely marginalized, standing in the back row. She actually notes in her deposition that 32 years of being pushed to the edges of rooms simply teaches your feet where to go.
That is such a heartbreaking detail.
It really is. She's standing there, hidden in her heavy winter coat, clutching a single silver necklace, and the back of the pendant has an engraving. It says, May 22nd.
Which is the day she was born.
Yes, and it is also the day her mother, Catherine, died due to complications from childbirth. For her entire life, her father, Raymond, pinned the blame for that tragedy squarely on her shoulders.
Which is horrific.
Unbelievable. When she was just 9 years old, he looked at her and said, if your mother hadn't had you, she'd still be here.
Placing the burden of a mother's death on a child is a form of profound psychological conditioning. It is a staggering emotional load.
How does a kid even process that?
They can't, really. When a parent verbalizes that a child's very existence is the cause of the family's ultimate trauma, it fundamentally warps the child's baseline for acceptable treatment.
Like they deserve to be treated badly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It essentially programs her to believe that she exists at a deficit. She owes a debt for simply breathing. So consequently, she becomes conditioned to accept neglect and cruelty because, on a subconscious level, she has been taught that she's inherently guilty.
Which perfectly explains why she doesn't cause a massive scene at the house after the funeral. They all return to the family home, this large, 2-story property. The extended relatives are gathered, picking at casseroles, drinking coffee, and Megan is just doing what she was trained to do.
Filling the gaps.
Right, collecting empty cups, staying out of the way, being functionally invisible. But Derek, he waits until the very last distant cousin pulls out of the driveway. He sits Megan down at the kitchen table, the exact same table where she did her high school homework, by the way.
The site of so much family history.
And he slides a manila folder across the wood. Inside is a legal document, a will. And it dictates that the house, both vehicles, the entirety of the bank accounts, the investments, 100% of the estate, is left solely to Derek James Norton.
A total disinheritance.
Megan's name isn't even mentioned, not a dollar, not a footnote.
And her reaction here is critical.
She looks down at the document. She stares at the signature on the final page. It resembles her father's handwriting, but her gut immediately tells her something is structurally wrong with it.
The subconscious recognizing anomalies.
Yeah, like the slant of the letters, the pressure of the ink on the page, it just feels off to her. But before she can even vocalize a single question, Derek completely shifts his demeanor.
The grieving brother vanishes.
Totally gone. He looks her dead in the eye and tells her she has 60 minutes to pack her belongings and vacate his property.
The speed of that transition is a crucial detail. The suddenness of the eviction isn't just about taking possession of the real estate. Physical displacement is one of the most effective psychological weapons an abuser can deploy.
Because it creates instant panic.
Precisely. If Derek simply presents the will, but allows Megan to remain in her childhood bedroom for, say, a few weeks while things are sorted out, he leaves her with a base of operations.
She'd have time to think.
Right. She has a familiar, warm environment. She has the cognitive bandwidth to sit down at her laptop, research probate law, look closely at that signature, and perhaps contact an attorney.
So by physically forcing her out into the sleet with no resources, he triggers a crisis.
He forces her into a frantic state of triage.
I look at the sheer logistical cruelty of this, and it doesn't make sense to me if his only goal is financial gain. I mean, if Derek just wants the house, why kick her out into a winter storm?
It does seem unnecessarily brutal.
It feels like a predator deliberately isolating the absolute weakest member of the herd just to watch them suffer. Like, why not let her stay and just slowly bleed her dry legally? The freezing driveway feels so theatrical.
Well, it might seem theatrical, but it is highly strategic. It's an ambush designed to deprive the victim of the mental space required to fight back. When you are terrified about where you will sleep that night, you do not have the luxury of questioning the nuances of a legal document.
That makes sense. You're just thinking about survival.
Exactly. Furthermore, the speed of the execution signals an overwhelming, unassailable power. He is demonstrating that he can discard her instantly, without any consequence.
And he didn't just stop at the physical eviction. As she is sitting in her 12-year-old Honda Civic in the parking lot of some Route 9 motel, staring at a declined credit card receipt, she checks her banking app.
This part is truly chilling.
The joint account she shared with her father is frozen. The banner reads, "Account hold initiated by cosigner." Now, let's look at the mechanics of this, because I actually had to dig into banking regulations to understand how this is even possible.
It's a very specific loophole.
Right. This was a joint checking account with rights of survivorship. Megan's own paycheck from her accounting firm was deposited there. How can a brother freeze an account that isn't his?
He leverages the administrative chaos that immediately follows a death. Often, in cases of elderly parents, a sibling, in this case Derek, is granted power of attorney or is added as a secondary signer to help manage the parent's finances as their health declines.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
But once the parent dies, the power of attorney technically dissolves instantly. However, if Derek is a cosigner, or if he rushes to the bank with a death certificate and the fraudulent will claiming to be the sole executor of the estate, he can instruct the bank to place a temporary freeze on all associated accounts pending probate review.
So he utilizes an administrative safeguard that is meant to protect the deceased's assets and weaponizes it to cut off his sister's personal income stream.
Exactly. He called the bank and initiated that freeze while the funeral flowers were still being arranged.
That is sickening.
He was building the cage while the father was still breathing. That requires a level of profound premeditation.
And to prove that this isn't just some isolated freak phenomenon, your source files include a striking parallel case.
Yes, the account of Athena Myers provides a perfect comparative analysis. 20 years prior to Megan's eviction, we see an almost identical psychological playbook utilized by parents against their own daughter.
Tell us about Athena.
Athena is 18 years old. She is a high school senior with a full-ride academic scholarship to a state university. And she discovers she is pregnant. She sits at her family's kitchen table. Again, the kitchen table is the site of familial sentencing, and she tells her parents.
And their reaction is just unbelievable.
Her mother, Carol, presents her with a horrifying ultimatum. She tells Athena she has already arranged for a couple in a neighboring town to adopt the unborn baby. Athena must agree to surrender the child, or she must leave the house immediately.
Give up your child or get out. The audacity of that demand is staggering.
When Athena refuses to surrender her bodily autonomy and her child, the parents physically expel her. It is late October. The temperature is dropping. Her father sits at the table, silently staring at a salt shaker, refusing to even intervene.
The silence of the enabler.
Precisely. Her younger brother watches from the staircase. They throw an 18-year-old pregnant high school student out onto a cold porch with a single canvas duffel bag.
Both Derek and Carol are employing the exact same strategy. They are banking on the elements, the cold, the fear, the sudden poverty, to break these young women so completely that they never find the strength to return and ask questions.
They want them erased from the family ledger entirely.
Erased. But physical erasure is rarely enough for abusers of this profile, is it?
No, they don't just want the victim gone. They need the victim's reputation destroyed.
Yeah.
This introduces the next phase of the methodology, the preemptive smear campaign.
Okay, this is where my blood really starts to boil, because Derek has the house. He has the money. Megan is sleeping in her car. He won. But he doesn't stop. He actively hunts her social safety net.
He has to make sure she has no allies.
Megan works at a small regional accounting firm. Derek actually drives to her workplace. He requests a meeting with her boss, a man named Mr. Greer. Derek sits in Greer's office, putting on his best performance of a deeply concerned, grieving brother.
Playing the victim by proxy.
Exactly. He tells the boss that Megan is dealing with severe mental health instability following the trauma of their father's death. He implies she is having a full-on breakdown and strongly suggests she needs a mandatory leave of absence for her own good.
He is attacking her professional credibility and severing her access to future income simultaneously.
And the boss buys it. He calls Megan in and forces her onto a paid leave of absence, citing corporate HR policies regarding employee wellness.
Weaponizing corporate policy just like he weaponized the bank's probate hold.
Yes. And then Derek pivots to the family. He drafts an email and sends it to a family group chat containing 40 different relatives. The text of the email is brilliant in its passive aggression. He writes, "Megan made the decision to leave the house on her own terms to process things. She is in a fragile state and may not be thinking clearly right now. Please give her space."
This is a textbook execution of Darvo.
Deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender.
Precisely. Derek knows he has committed a heinous act. He knows he threw his sister into a winter storm. To protect his own ego, and more importantly, to protect his social standing within the community, he must strike first.
Controlling the narrative.
Right. If he can successfully establish the narrative that Megan is unstable, irrational, and acting erratically, he inoculates himself against any future accusations she might make.
So when she tells the truth, no one believes her.
Exactly. When she eventually tries to tell the truth about the forged will and the eviction, the community is already primed to view her claims as the delusions of a grieving, unstable woman.
I hear you on the ego protection, but I really don't think it's just about his ego. It's highly tactical financial warfare. He's poisoning the well so that if she ever tries to secure legal counsel or needs a personal loan for a retainer, the extended family won't fund her.
That's a very astute point.
Right. They won't help an unstable person sue the responsible brother. And it works flawlessly. Megan describes walking into the local grocery store a few days later. She sees her Aunt Ruth in the produce aisle. Aunt Ruth makes direct eye contact with Megan. Her face tightens, and she immediately turns her cart and walks the other way.
Complete social shunning.
A neighbor, Margaret Bowen, actually whispers loudly enough for Megan to hear, "I heard she just walked out on her brother right after the funeral. Shame."
The ostracization is swift and comprehensive. And we observe the exact same social engineering in Athena's case. Let's fast forward 20 years after Athena was thrown onto that porch.
Okay, 20 years later.
The grandmother, who we will discuss in detail momentarily, passes away. When Athena's mother, Carol, realizes there is a substantial inheritance at stake, she immediately begins working the local community. She goes to the church groups, the Rotary clubs, the neighbors.
Just spreading poison everywhere.
Carol paints a vivid picture of Athena as a cold, calculating, estranged daughter who broke her parents' hearts, ran away, and then swooped back into town at the 11th hour to manipulate a senile old woman out of her savings.
The audacity to throw your pregnant teenager onto the street and then 20 years later cry to the church choir that she abandoned you.
It's a complete inversion of reality.
But here's the most infuriating element of the smear campaign. The lie itself is terrible, yes, but what truly disturbs me is how eagerly the extended family and the townspeople swallow it.
They don't question it at all.
No, they don't demand proof. They don't call Megan to hear her side of the story. They just accept Derek's email as gospel.
What's fascinating here is that it's driven by the principle of cognitive dissonance, combined with a human preference for the path of least resistance.
Explain the mechanics of that. I need to understand why Aunt Ruth just walked away.
If Aunt Ruth wants to believe Megan, she has to confront a terrifying reality. She has to accept that her nephew, Derek, the polished, well-spoken young man who organized a beautiful funeral, is actually a sociopathic predator who forged a legal document and forced his sister into homelessness.
That's a huge paradigm shift.
A massive one. Acknowledging that truth would require Aunt Ruth to take action. She would have to intervene, cause family conflict, perhaps offer Megan a place to stay, or even confront Derek.
And that's messy.
It is exhausting and socially dangerous. Conversely, believing that Megan simply had a mental breakdown is a neat, tidy narrative. It requires no intervention. It allows the extended family to feel pity without the obligation of action. They choose the lie because the lie is comfortable.
Wow. They sacrifice the victim to maintain the illusion of a functional family. It's incredibly dark. Derek even texts Megan during this period. She's literally living in her car, rationing saltines, and he texts her offering to take their mother's silver necklace, the only physical connection Megan has to her mother, and trade it for a month's rent at a cheap apartment.
He offers to buy it off her like it's scrap silver.
Yes. It's so degrading.
A blatant display of dominance. He's trying to strip her of her final piece of emotional armor.
But right when the isolation is absolute, right when Megan is shivering in the back seat of a frozen Honda Civic, the narrative architecture completely shifts. We enter the phase of the secret guardians.
The hidden safety nets of the family structure finally activate.
Let's talk about Viola. Megan drives to a community church just to use a heated restroom and fill a water bottle. As she's leaving, she spots a handwritten index card pinned to the community bulletin board. It reads, "Room for rent, quiet neighborhood, $400 a month, call Viola."
A lifeline right when she needs it most.
Exactly. Megan drives to the address. It's an older, slightly weathered house with a sagging front porch and faded green shutters. She knocks. An older woman, Viola Henderson, opens the door. Viola takes one look at Megan, and her eyes immediately drop to the silver necklace resting against Megan's coat.
The necklace engraved with May 22nd.
Yes, Viola's hands physically begin to tremble. She stares at Megan's face and whispers a single word. Catherine.
She recognizes the mother and the daughter.
Viola doesn't ask for a credit check. She doesn't ask for a deposit. She pulls Megan inside out of the cold and rents her the room on the spot. A few days later, once Megan has finally slept in a warm bed, Viola sits her down at the kitchen table.
And this time, the kitchen table isn't a place of betrayal.
Right. It's a place of truth. Viola brings out a weathered shoebox. She opens it to reveal stacks of faded 32-year-old Polaroids. Viola reveals the truth. 3 decades ago, Viola was Catherine's private, in-home nurse.
And she delivers the psychological antidote to 30 years of the father's poison.
Viola explains that Catherine had a severe degenerative heart condition. The doctors explicitly warned her that carrying a child to term would likely be fatal. But Catherine chose to have the baby. She wanted a child more than anything.
It was a deliberate choice.
Yes. She specifically picked the name Megan because it means strong. Catherine survived just long enough to hold her daughter for 6 hours before she passed away. The narrative that Raymond had drilled into Megan's head, that she was an unwanted burden, a parasite that killed her mother, was a complete fabrication.
Catherine died because she refused to let Megan go.
You cannot overstate the psychological impact of that revelation. In a single conversation, Viola dismantles the foundational trauma of Megan's entire life.
It reframes her existence from an act of destruction to an act of profound, deliberate love.
But Catherine's love wasn't just sentimental, it was structural. And this is where the mechanics of the story get incredibly complex. Catherine didn't just leave a necklace, she left a fortress.
A legal fortress.
Viola explains that Catherine came from generational wealth in Connecticut, something Raymond constantly resented. Catherine understood exactly who her husband was. She knew he was controlling, bitter, and punitive. She knew that once she was gone, he would attempt to erase Megan or control her through financial abuse.
So she engaged in what we might term asymmetric estate planning.
Okay, walk us through the legal mechanics of what Catherine actually did, because this is brilliant.
Before her death, Catherine utilized her separate inherited wealth to establish an irrevocable trust. Now, an irrevocable trust is vastly different from a standard will or a revocable living trust.
How so?
Once an irrevocable trust is signed and funded, the grantor, in this case Catherine, essentially relinquishes ownership of the assets to the trust itself. The critical legal factor here is that because the assets no longer belong to Catherine personally, they do not pass through probate upon her death.
So they bypass the husband entirely.
Exactly. They are completely shielded from her spouse. Raymond had absolutely no legal authority to access, dissolve, or alter the terms of that trust.
And the terms of the trust were highly specific.
Extremely specific.
Yeah.
The trust was structured to remain entirely dormant and inaccessible until Megan reached the age of 30.
Why 30?
Catherine instituted this age requirement to ensure Megan was fully an adult, presumably educated and capable of managing capital, before she gained access. However, Raymond eventually discovered the existence of the trust documents years after Catherine's death.
But he couldn't touch the money.
Right, he couldn't touch the money, but he controlled the environment. He fired Viola. He intercepted all correspondence from the trust's administrative lawyers. He threatened Viola with police action for trespassing if she ever came near his property or attempted to contact his daughter.
He built an iron wall of silence around Megan,
hoping that if she never knew the trust existed, the bank would eventually absorb it as unclaimed property, or she would remain forever dependent on him.
He weaponized isolation. And again, your files show a stunning parallel with the Athena case. We have another secret guardian who foresaw the abuse and built a paper fortress. Let's talk about Athena's grandmother, Margaret.
Margaret is the archetype of the maternal guardian figure. Let's rewind to the night Athena's parents threw her out onto that October porch. While Athena is sitting there in the freezing cold with her duffel bag, a car pulls into the driveway.
It's the grandmother.
It's Margaret. She rolls down the window and says, "Get in, Athena, you'll catch your death." She drives the pregnant teenager to her large farmhouse on the edge of town, but before Athena gets out of the car, Margaret reaches into her purse.
This detail is so cinematic.
She pulls out a small, heavy brass key tied to a frayed blue ribbon. She places it in Athena's hand and says, "This opens my door. I don't care what your parents say. You use it whenever the world shuts theirs."
The contrast is just breathtaking. You have these weak, image-obsessed parents and a greedy brother throwing their own flesh and blood into the winter weather. And then you have these women, Catherine, Viola, Margaret.
They couldn't physically fight the abusers. Catherine was dying. Margaret was aging. Viola was an employee.
But they saw the danger coming decades in advance.
They understood that physical protection is temporary, but legal protection is enduring. They essentially weaponized the probate code to protect love.
Weaponize the probate code to protect love. I love that phrasing.
They utilized the highest levels of legal structuring, irrevocable trusts, independent trustees, safety deposit boxes, to ensure that when the abusers eventually made their inevitable power grab, they would walk directly into a legal minefield.
And that is exactly what happens, because Megan now has the knowledge, and as an accountant, she knows exactly how to follow a paper trail. The investigation begins.
And she finally has the resources to execute it.
Let's start with the necklace. Viola tells Megan that the silver pendant isn't just a piece of jewelry. She instructs Megan to look very closely at the clasp mechanism. Hidden inside the clasp is a micro-engraved serial number.
Let's talk about the mechanics of this because it's fascinating.
Yeah, how does that work?
Microengraving involves using specialized laser equipment to etch alphanumeric codes that are virtually invisible to the naked eye. It was Catherine's physical failsafe. It was the literal alphanumeric activation key for the trust held at First Heritage Bank.
So Megan walks into the massive downtown branch of First Heritage. She presents her identification, her birth certificate, and the serial number. The bank manager pulls the file. 32 years of compound interest on Catherine's initial deposit.
And the payout is substantial.
Megan walks out of the bank with sole, unencumbered control of an account holding $1.18 million.
The injection of capital changes the entire dynamic of the conflict. Megan is no longer a terrified, unhoused victim. She is a highly capitalized, motivated adversary.
But she doesn't just take the $1 million and move to a beach. The money gives her the bandwidth to answer the question that has been haunting her since the kitchen table. How did Derek fake that signature?
She needs proof.
She enlists the help of her closest friend, a commercial real estate lawyer named Grace. Their first stop is Thomas Aldridge, the elderly attorney who handled her mother's estate decades ago. Aldridge is retired, but he still maintains his archives. He opens a heavy fireproof safe in his home office and pulls out Raymond's original legally binding will, drafted and notarized in 1996.
And the terms of the authentic document are precisely what you would expect.
A strict, unequivocal 50-50 split of all assets between Derek and Megan. This original document immediately confirms that the 2024 amendment Derek presented, the one leaving everything to him, is fraudulent.
But knowing it's fake and proving it in court are two entirely different things.
Right. So Grace hires a forensic document examiner. Let's dive into the mechanics of handwriting analysis, because it's not just looking at a signature and saying, oh, that looks weird.
No, forensic document examination is a rigorous microscopic science. The examiner isn't just looking at the shape of the letters, they are analyzing biometric data left on the page.
Biometric data from ink.
Yes. They examine class characteristics, which are the standard ways people are taught to write, versus individual characteristics, which are the unique, unconscious habits a writer develops over decades.
Okay, so the examiner compares the 1996 will to Derek's 2024 fake. And the report highlights several glaring anomalies. First, the pen pressure. When someone naturally signs their name, the pressure is fluid. But when someone is forging a signature, they're essentially drawing the name, which results in heavier, more deliberate ink distribution on the downstrokes.
It lacks natural rhythm.
Exactly. Second, the examiner notes a phenomenon called tremor, a fraud. These are microscopic hesitations in the ink line where the forger literally paused to check the source material.
The hesitation of a guilty conscience, essentially.
Right. And finally, the structural errors. The tail on the lowercase y in Raymond's signature is truncated, lacking the sweeping loop Raymond used for 40 years. It's a clumsy, desperate forgery.
So the physical forgery is confirmed, but a forged document requires a complicit notary public to give the veneer of legality. The notary stamp is what allows the document to be entered into probate.
Exactly. So who stamped it? Grace looks at the notary seal on the fake will. The name is Frank Marshall. Grace pulls the state's LLC registry and cross-references the name. Frank Marshall isn't just some random notary at a UPS store.
He's connected to Derek.
He is Derek's equal business partner in a commercial real estate venture called Whitmore Heights Development.
This is the smoking gun. It establishes a massive, undeniable conflict of interest, and it elevates the crime from a simple forgery to a multi-party conspiracy to commit fraud.
It's a felony.
But uncovering the crime immediately raises a much deeper, more perplexing question regarding Derek's motivation.
Why do it? That's what I kept asking myself when I read this. Derek is the golden child. Under the legitimate 1996 will, he gets 50% of a fully paid-off, massive family estate. He gets hundreds of thousands of dollars legally. Why risk a felony forgery charge, disbarment from his industry, and federal prison just to steal the other half?
It seems like an insane risk.
That makes no sense if it's just about getting a little richer.
It seems insane if you assume his motivation is simple greed. But as forensic accountants often discover, high-risk financial crimes are rarely motivated by a desire for luxury. They are motivated by the absolute terror of impending ruin.
Pure panic.
Grace hires a forensic accountant to audit Derek's digital and financial footprint, and the underlying reality of Derek's life is exposed.
Let's walk through the exact financial mechanics of his ruin because it is a total house of cards. Derek and Frank Marshall's LLC, Whitmore Heights, had purchased several tracts of commercial land to develop luxury residential lots.
But the market shifted. Zoning was delayed, and the lots didn't sell.
Right. To fund the initial purchase, the LLC had taken out a massive commercial construction loan. They defaulted. They missed 3 consecutive payments on a $340,000 commercial note. The bank was initiating pre-foreclosure proceedings.
A $340,000 commercial default is catastrophic for a small developer. It destroys their credit, seizes their assets, and bankrupts the LLC.
But that's only half the exposure. To try and cover the failing LLC, Derek committed his first major crime. While their father, Raymond, was bedridden, heavily medicated, and barely lucid during his final months, Derek utilized his status as the golden child to push through an unauthorized $280,000 second mortgage on the father's house.
He literally stole equity from his dying father.
Yes. Add to that $60,000 in personal unsecured credit card debt he was leasing a BMW couldn't afford, taking trips to Project Success. Derek's total financial exposure was a staggering $680,000.
Now, the strategic necessity of the forgery becomes crystal clear. Think about the mechanics of probate. If the original 1996 will is executed, the estate goes into a 50-50 split.
I see it. If it goes 50-50, Megan's lawyers and the probate court mandate a full accounting of the estate's liabilities.
Exactly.
During that audit, they would immediately discover the $280,000 second mortgage that Derek secretly attached to the property.
And the bank would demand immediate satisfaction of that lien upon the transfer of the deed. Because the cash isn't there, the bank would foreclose on the childhood home. Derek would lose the house, he would lose his LLC, his social standing would be obliterated.
And most importantly, Megan would undoubtedly press charges for the fraudulent mortgage taken out against her 50% equity in the home.
He was trapped. The forgery wasn't a game of Monopoly where he was just trying to steal his sister's piece of the pie to get richer. It was a panicked cover-up for a massive pre-existing financial crime.
He threw his sister into the sleep because her mere legal presence, her legal right to 50% of the estate, was a lethal threat to his freedom.
It is the inevitable collapse of an unsustainable lie. He built his entire identity on the illusion of success, and maintaining that illusion required increasingly desperate criminal acts. Which leads us to the escalation phase.
Right, because they always push it too far.
The perpetrators, entirely blind to their own exposure, always push their luck too far.
Let's talk about the escalation, because Derek is feeling completely invulnerable right now. He thinks his sister is broken and gone. He thinks the fake will is secure. So he decides to host a family gathering to ostensibly honor their late father's memory in the stolen house.
Which is just deeply cynical.
It is. He invites Aunt Ruth, Uncle Howard, all the cousins who received that smear campaign email. He specifically, pointedly does not invite Megan.
But Megan is no longer playing by his rules. She attends anyway.
She crashes the party, the front door is unlocked for guests, and Megan just walks right into the foyer. She is wearing a tailored coat, and resting prominently over her collar is Catherine's silver necklace.
The symbol of everything he tried to destroy.
The room goes completely uncomfortably silent. Forks literally pause mid-air over plates of food. Derek is furious. He walks up to her and tries to establish dominance right there in the living room.
He goes back to his old playbook.
He attempts to humiliate her. He leans in and says, "Dad couldn't even look at you at the end. Every time he saw your face, he saw the worst day of his life. You don't belong here." He is trying to make her crack, to make her scream, to prove to the room that she is the unstable woman he claimed she was in that email.
But she doesn't react to the emotional bait.
She stays completely chillingly calm. Because while Derek is talking, Megan is scanning the room. She is observing the scene of the crime. She notices that the massive oak bookcase that held her father's extensive collection of Hemingway first editions is entirely empty.
The assets are disappearing.
The antique grandfather clock that stood in the hallway for 40 years is missing. The glass display cabinet where Raymond kept his vintage watch collection is bare. Derek inherited a fully furnished, wealthy estate just 3 weeks ago, and half the high-value physical assets have already vanished.
She is witnessing the real-time dissipation of estate assets. This is a crucial concept in forensic accounting during probate disputes.
How common is that?
Very common. When an executor or a fraudulent beneficiary knows they are in financial trouble, they begin liquidating the physical assets of the estate, jewelry, art, rare books, vehicles, before the court can properly inventory them. They sell them for cash on the secondary market to rapidly pay down immediate debts or hide funds.
And she literally overhears him doing it. She walks toward the kitchen and hears Derek in the laundry room whispering frantically on his cell phone, begging a creditor for an extension, promising that a wire transfer is coming by Friday.
The facade is crumbling in real time.
She sees the stark terror hiding underneath the arrogance. In this moment, a silent observation perfectly mirrors Athena's countertrap 20 years later.
Yes. Yeah. Let's examine Athena's escalation, because it involves a completely different arena.
Yeah.
Courtroom.
Let's bring Athena's story to its climax. Remember, Athena's grandmother, Margaret, leaves her the farmhouse and an estate valued at roughly $680,000. Athena's family, the parents who threw her out, the brother who watched, they are incensed.
They cannot stand that she got the money.
They file a massive probate lawsuit challenging the grandmother's trust. The basis of their suit is a claim of undue influence and diminished mental capacity. They argue that Margaret was senile and that Athena, the estranged daughter, manipulated an incompetent woman into changing her estate plan.
It's a very standard legal attack in these situations.
They hire a notoriously aggressive, expensive probate litigator named Curtis Doyle. They walk into the county courthouse smirking. They are confident they're going to legally steamroll this poor, struggling single mother they haven't spoken to in 2 decades.
But their confidence is rooted in a devastating lack of curiosity. For 20 years, they never once bothered to type Athena's name into a search engine.
Not once.
They never checked LinkedIn. If they had done even basic due diligence, they would have learned that the terrified teenage girl they threw onto a porch is now a senior assistant district attorney.
Oh, it is just so good.
She runs a division. She dissects complex fraud cases and destroys hostile witnesses in criminal court for a living. And remember that heavy brass key on the blue ribbon.
The key that opens the farmhouse door.
It opens much more than the front door. Athena uses that key to unlock the deep, heavy bottom drawer of Margaret's antique roll-top desk. Inside, Margaret hadn't just left sentimental letters. She had left a perfectly executed, fireproof legal folio.
Let's look at the mechanics of what Margaret placed in that folio to build an impenetrable defense. First, a comprehensive neuropsychological evaluation and a doctor's note of total competency dated the exact week the trust was signed.
Completely destroying the diminished capacity argument before it even starts.
Precisely. Second, sworn notarized affidavits from 2 independent witnesses, a neighbor and the local pharmacist, attesting that Margaret was fully lucid and acting of her own free will without Athena even being present during the drafting.
Bulletproof evidence.
And finally, the ultimate trapdoor, a comprehensively drafted no contest clause embedded in the trust.
Let's explain the mechanics of a no contest clause, also known as an in terrorem clause, because it is a brutal piece of legal engineering.
Yeah, how does that work?
A no contest clause stipulates that if any beneficiary challenges the validity of the will or trust in court and loses, they entirely forfeit whatever inheritance they were originally granted. It is designed to terrify greedy relatives into accepting the terms of the document rather than risking total disinheritance through frivolous litigation.
I have to ask a behavioral question here. Why don't these women just detonate the bomb immediately? When Megan finds the forged will, or when Athena finds out her family is suing her, why not just pick up the phone, call them, and scream, "I have the proof, you're going to jail, I have the doctor's note, I have the forensic report." Why the prolonged silence?
Because, as Athena notes in her own reflections on the case, winning loudly is just losing slowly.
That is a great quote.
Both Megan and Athena are seasoned professionals.
Yeah.
Megan understands audits. Athena understands prosecution. They understand that in legal warfare, premature disclosure of evidence is a fatal error.
You tip your hand too soon?
Exactly. If you scream, if you show your hand before the trap is fully set, you give the abuser time to adapt. Derek could have fled the jurisdiction, transferred assets to offshore accounts, or destroyed the original will. Athena's family could have withdrawn their lawsuit before incurring penalties.
So the silence is the trap.
By maintaining absolute silence, they allow the abusers to confidently, arrogantly walk themselves right off a legal cliff.
It's the narcissism. The perpetrators are incapable of updating their mental models of these women. Derek still looks at Megan and sees the helpless, marginalized sister who will just take the abuse. Carol still looks at Athena and sees the terrified, powerless 18-year-old on the porch.
They refuse to see reality.
Their arrogance completely prevents them from comprehending that they are now dealing with a well-funded, highly strategic millionaire and a senior prosecutor.
Their narcissism creates a profound blind spot. And that blind spot is what allows for the ultimate checkmate, the moment the meticulously built trap finally springs.
This brings us to my absolute favorite part of the entire deep dive, the master stroke. Let's look at what Megan does with her millions. She doesn't just call the local police department and say, hey, my brother forged a document.
That would result in a messy, prolonged criminal trial where Derek might plead down or delay for years.
Right. She decides to go nuclear, but she does it in a completely legal, ruthlessly corporate manner. Megan and her lawyer, Grace, contact a distressed debt firm operating out of Philadelphia.
This is a brilliant, highly sophisticated tactical maneuver. Let's unpack the mechanics of the distressed debt market, because most people don't realize this is even possible.
Yeah, explain how someone buys debt.
When a commercial entity like Derek's LLC defaults on a loan, the issuing bank often doesn't want to deal with the prolonged, expensive headache of foreclosing on half-finished real estate. They want the toxic, non-performing loan off their balance sheets quickly. So the bank will bundle these bad loans and sell them to third-party collection agencies or distressed debt firms for pennies on the dollar.
Exactly. The bank might sell Derek's $340,000 debt for $150,000 just to be rid of it. But here is the genius part. Debt is a tradable commodity.
And Megan has capital.
Through her lawyer, and utilizing the massive capital from Catherine's trust fund, Megan steps into the secondary market. She legally purchases the assignment of Derek's $340,000 defaulted commercial loan.
She buys his paper.
She buys his paper. She is no longer just his aggrieved sister. She is legally, structurally, his largest secured creditor. He literally owes the $340,000 directly to her. So the trap is fully set.
The jaws close.
Grace contacts Derek and his lawyer, a cheap, panic local attorney named Phil Driscoll, and demands a meeting regarding the estate.
Setting the stage for the final confrontation.
It's a gray, cold March morning. They meet in the sleek, glass-walled conference room of Grace's law firm. Derek struts in, still bouncing his knee, acting completely arrogant. He looks across the table at Megan and rolls his eyes. He's still playing the old script, treating her like a nuisance.
He anticipates a plea for a small settlement, a few $1,000s to make her go away.
He has no idea. Grace doesn't even raise her voice. She calmly, methodically begins laying the documentation on the glass table. Document 1. The original, fully executed 1996 will mandating the 50-50 split. Document 2. The 2024 fake amendment. Document 3. The 40-page forensic examiner's report detailing the pen pressure, the truncated letters, and the undeniable proof of forgery. Document 4. The LLC registry proving the notary, Frank Marshall, is Derek's business partner, establishing conspiracy to commit fraud.
The walls of the cage are suddenly glaringly visible.
Derek scoffs. He actually laughs. He leans back and calls it a bluff. He tells Megan, you don't have the money to fight this in court. You've always been nothing. You're going to bankrupt yourself trying to sue me.
And that is the moment Grace plays the final, insurmountable card.
Grace slides one final, thick manila envelope across the polished glass table. It is the official assignment of debt. She looks directly at Derek and asks, do you know who owns your business debts now, Derek?
Oh, man.
Derek's lawyer, Phil, picks up the document. He reads the assignee line. Phil literally stops breathing. He slowly hands the paper to Derek. Derek reads it. And the color completely, instantly drains from his face. All the blood leaves his head.
The absolute realization of doom.
The realization hits him like a freight train. The sister he gave exactly 1 hour to pack, the sister he threw onto a frozen driveway with $17. She now owns his entire financial existence. She owns the $340,000 debt.
He is cornered, legally, financially, structurally, and morally. He has absolutely no avenues of escape.
And Megan's delivery in this moment is what makes her so incredible. She doesn't scream. She doesn't gloat. She simply looks at him and delivers the coldest, most composed line imaginable. I'm not here to destroy you, Derek. I'm here because you refused to do the right thing when I asked nicely.
That sentence is profound. It emphasizes the core philosophy of her retaliation. This isn't about raw, chaotic vengeance. Vengeance would be destroying him just to watch him suffer.
Right.
This is about forcing the accountability that he arrogantly refused to accept voluntarily.
Yeah.
She dictates the terms of his surrender, and they are brilliantly constructed.
Let's break down the exact terms she forces upon him. What does she demand?
The terms are completely non-negotiable. First, Derek must sign a sworn, notarized legal affidavit explicitly admitting that the 2024 amendment is a fraudulent forgery and formally restoring the original 1996 will to the probate court.
He has to confess on paper.
He must legally admit to his crime on paper.
Yeah.
Yes. Second, he must draft a comprehensive written retraction. He must send this retraction to all 40 family members on that email chain and post it to the family Facebook group.
Oh, the public humiliation.
The retraction must explicitly state that he lied about Megan's mental health, that he forged the document, and that he illegally evicted her.
The complete and total dismantling of the smear campaign, the public destruction of his golden child persona.
Exactly. And third, the financial leash. In exchange for his full confession and public retraction, Megan agrees not to immediately call in the $340,000 debt. Instead, she will restructure the debt over a 5-year term at a reduced interest rate.
So she owns him for 5 years.
She doesn't crush him into immediate bankruptcy. She turns him into her indentured servant. He will spend the next 5 years of his life working to pay his sister back the money he stole.
And what happens if he refuses to sign?
If he refuses even a single term, Grace outlines the immediate consequences. They will file the forensic report with the district attorney to initiate felony forgery charges. They will report Frank Marshall to the state notary board, destroying his career.
Total annihilation.
And Megan, acting as the primary creditor, will immediately initiate full collection proceedings on the $340,000 debt, seizing the LLC's assets, forcing the sale of Derek's home, and pushing him into personal bankruptcy. He will lose his house, his business, his reputation, and likely his physical freedom.
He has no choice. Derek picks up the pen. Megan notes in her file that his hand is literally shaking so violently he can barely form the letters of his own name. He signs the confession.
It's over.
And the climax of Athena's story is equally, if not more, devastating because it happens in a public courtroom.
Athena's climax is a masterclass in procedural dominance. The day of the probate hearing arrives. Athena's family walks into the county courthouse, practically vibrating with arrogance. Their expensive litigator, Curtis Doyle, confidently pushes through the swinging wooden doors into the courtroom.
Smug as anything.
He walks down the aisle, looks across the room at the respondent's table, and freezes. He realizes that the poor, estranged single mom he is suing is Athena Myers, the senior assistant district attorney.
The woman who has publicly dismantled him in criminal court a dozen times. I can just imagine the sheer terror flooding his system. He must have wanted to sink into the floor.
It is the instantaneous public death of a man's professional certainty. And Athena doesn't grandstand. She doesn't make a dramatic speech to the gallery. She simply stands up, addresses the judge, and methodically submits the ironclad documents from Margaret's folio into evidence.
Exhibit A, the doctor's note of competency.
Exhibit B, the independent witness affidavits. Exhibit C, the fully funded trust document containing the no contest clause.
The judge reviews the paperwork. It is completely unassailable.
The judge takes one look at the doctor's note, glares at Curtis Doyle, and immediately upholds the validity of the trust. But more importantly, because the family initiated a frivolous lawsuit in bad faith, the judge triggers the interim clause.
Explain the fallout of that trigger, because it's brutal.
The family instantly forfeits the minor token inheritances Margaret had left them. Furthermore, the judge orders the family to pay the entirety of Athena's legal defense costs.
Which have to be massive.
Athena's father, who we learn was already drowning in consumer debt, is handed a massive court-ordered legal bill. They walked into that courthouse attempting to steal $680,000, and they walked out significantly poorer than they started, publicly humiliated on the judicial record.
So let's examine the aftermath. The crater left behind when the truth finally detonates, because you can't unring a bell like this. In Megan's case, Derek complies with the terms. He sends the retraction email. It hits the inboxes of 40 relatives simultaneously.
The illusion of the perfect family shatters completely.
The cognitive dissonance is broken. Aunt Ruth, the one who turned her cart in the grocery store, she calls Megan weeping, apologizing profusely, admitting that she simply believed what was easiest to believe because she was a coward.
A very harsh self-realization.
Uncle Howard drives over to Viola's house carrying boxes of old photo albums to try and make amends. The gossip mill in the town reverses course.
The social currency that Derek spent his entire life accumulating is completely bankrupted in a single afternoon.
He is a total pariah. Financially, because of the restructured debt and the need to pay off the unauthorized $280,000 second mortgage, Derek is forced to sell his half of the childhood house, the house he committed a felony to steal.
He loses everything he tried to take.
He loses his equity. His business partner, Frank Marshall, dissolves the LLC to distance himself from the fraud. Derek moves out of Whitmore and rents a cheap one-bedroom apartment in Scranton. The truth performed its function. It sanitized the wound.
But the files indicate there is a moment of complex emotional closure, a final interaction between brother and sister.
Yes, the phone call. It happens about 8 months later. It's incredibly quiet and deeply sad. Derek calls Megan late one evening. He sounds completely hollowed out. He admits to her that when he was 8 years old, their father Raymond sat him down on the back porch and told him the exact same lie. If she hadn't been born, your mother would be alive.
He was poisoned by the same father.
Derek tells Megan that he believed that poison his entire life. He believes she was a parasite, and he offers a genuine apology. And Megan's reaction is a masterclass in psychological boundary setting.
How does she respond?
She accepts the apology, she acknowledges his pain, but she does not absolve him. She writes this incredible thought in her journal. Forgiveness isn't a door you just open. It's a long hallway, and I am the one who decides exactly how far down it he gets to walk.
That is a remarkably healthy, sophisticated psychological boundary. She's able to contextualize his behavior. She understands the exact mechanism of how he was warped and manipulated by a broken, grieving, abusive father.
Right.
But she explicitly refuses to excuse the fact that as a 32-year-old adult, he still consciously chose to forge a signature and throw her into a winter storm. Context is vital for understanding, but context does not cancel accountability.
Context does not cancel accountability. That is the line of this deep dive right there. Understanding the why doesn't mean you have to accept the what.
Precisely.
And Megan goes on to build an incredibly beautiful, grounded life. She uses a portion of the trust to open her own independent accounting firm right on the town square. She names it Norton and Daughters Accounting Services, not Norton and Sons.
I love that. Reclaiming the name.
She frames the 32-year-old Polaroid of her mother holding her and hangs it directly behind her desk. She specializes in helping single mothers, widows, and marginalized women untangle complex financial abuse. And her very first act with the money, she hires a high-end contractor to completely rebuild Viola's sagging front porch.
When we synthesize the outcomes of both Megan's and Athena's journeys, the most fascinating takeaway is the ultimate goal of these women. Neither of them sought pure, scorched earth vengeance.
They could have ruined them even more.
If Megan truly wanted to destroy Derek, she could have handed that forensic report to the district attorney and sent him to federal prison for years. If Athena wanted vengeance, she could have used her position as a prosecutor to publicly humiliate her parents in the local press.
But they explicitly chose not to do that. Why?
Because they sought truth and structural accountability, not destruction. They forced the legal frameworks, the financial ledgers, and the social records of their communities to accurately reflect reality. They didn't derive sadistic joy from watching their abusers face ruin. They simply found deep, lasting peace in their own undeniable vindication. They forced the narrative to be corrected.
So as we wrap up this analysis, what does this all mean for us? We've walked through the mechanics of these incredible, heavy, complex stories of betrayal. I think it means that family isn't necessarily defined by blood or genetics.
It really isn't.
Sometimes family is the private nurse, Viola, who harbors a dangerous secret for 32 years and leaves her porch light on for a girl she hasn't seen since infancy. Sometimes family is the grandmother, Margaret, who hands you a heavy brass key on a frayed blue ribbon when your own parents throw you out into the October frost.
Family is who protects you.
It means that understanding the psychological reasons why someone hurt you doesn't legally or morally obligate you to let them continue hurting you.
And on a practical level, it underscores a fundamental, unyielding reality of our legal and social systems. When you find yourself dealing with manipulative, narcissistic individuals who are actively attempting to rewrite your shared history or trying to cast you as the villain to camouflage their own financial or emotional crimes, you must remember one rule.
What's the rule?
Stories always lose to documents.
Stories lose to documents. That is the ultimate takeaway. Keep your receipts. Dig into the paper trail. Maintain your composure. Let them talk. Let them spin their intricate webs. Let them send their emails while you quietly, methodically gather the proof. If you are listening to this right now and you are in a situation where someone is actively trying to erase you or diminish your worth, do not scream. Do not engage in the emotional warfare they want. Build your file.
I want to leave the listener with one final psychological concept to mull over, building directly on the metaphor of Athena's brass key. Human nature dictates that we spend a disproportionate amount of our lives worrying about the metaphorical doors that people slam in our faces.
Oh, absolutely.
We focus on the trauma of the rejection, the sting of the eviction, the coldness of the driveway. But in our hyperfixation on the doors that are closed to us, we frequently forget to examine what we are already holding. What if you are currently carrying the key to your own defense, the undeniable proof of your own worth, and you simply haven't investigated deeply enough to realize what it opens yet?
What a profound thought to end on. Look in your pockets. You might already have the key. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay analytical, stay strong, keep your receipts, and remember, you write the final documented chapter of your own story. We'll see you next time.